The final scores, Hawthorn have won 13-22, 100 exactly, North Melbourne 10-10, 70.
I hate losing. Everyone hates losing, but you don't mind losing on a day when you're not the best side. We just had to put a stop to this. Enough was enough sort of thing. And they weren't a better side than us. They might have been as good, but we didn't think of them as a better side over a season, not on a day.
We had in those premiership sides guys like Frank Gumbledon and Ross Henshaw and Gary Cowton, Peter Chisnell, Sam Kegovich, and they were all guys from our local country area. And so our effort was not just Wade Davis and Rantel and the 10-year rule and the interstate players, Blight, Cable and those fellas. I mean, we were just as hard at it in the country and in our local metropolitan area.
I thought Keith Gregg was our best player that I'd seen, and I think Cable's up there with him. I thought Cable, and the strange thing about Barry Cable, he's the toughest bloke I've ever seen. Pound for pound, apart from what he could bench press. He could bench press more than anyone else at the club. But his courage in terms of getting the ball and putting his head over the ball, we talk about the contemporary jargon now about head over the ball. Barry Cable never, like Keith Gregg.
The 1977 VFL Grand Final between North Melbourne and Collingwood.
Through the Channel 7 network.
And with that introduction, the VFL Grand Final went live on television around Australia. The North Melbourne Collingwood clash was viewed by more than 108,000 people at the MCG and more than 1.5 million people in every state of the Commonwealth on the 7 network. It was the greatest daytime audience in Australian television history. Few people who tuned in their sets just after 2 p.m. on September the 24th, 1977, could have thought that they were about to witness one of the most dramatic moments in Australian sporting history.
We'd played in 3 grand finals in a row and only won one of them. So it was disappointing, and we wanted to make amends for that as well. So we were prepared to be trained very hard, and we approached the season as though we were going to make amends.
77 hurt my knee in the 7th round against Richmond at the MCG. Didn't know how bad it was until I saw the surgeon, I think on the Monday. John Grant said, no, you're gone for the year.
Plays on quickly, Wayne Schimmelbusch.
I think we finished third on the ladder, and we lost the last home and away game against the Swans at Arden Street, which wasn't a good thing, and then we lost the first final to Hawthorn, of course. Who else? So when we eventually got back on track, and we got back on track, I suppose, by this is what I put it down to, and Barassi probably agrees to a certain extent. He didn't think we were competing well enough. We'd lost that desire to make a contest of every situation on the ground, and he knew that I was very competitive, especially when I was pitted against my brother Darryl. We'd grown up from little kids just competing with everything, whether we were racing frogs in the backyard, playing cricket, playing football, whatever we were doing, always end up in a fight. We're that competitive with each other. So on that night after we lost to Hawthorn, he just sort of gave us man-on-man contests all night to try and get some competition back into us. Very hard work. But he put me against Darryl, and we went at it over and over and over again. And the whole side was watching us, which seemed like 10 minutes. He just kicked the ball back and had to do it again and again. And of course, something had to give in the end. And I actually tackled Darryl at one stage and threw him on the ground, and he broke his leg. And he looked like getting a game that week. So Darryl, in one way, sort of really never forgiven me for it. But I think the whole team got the idea of what competing was really about, and from then on we never looked back, I suppose.
Cable. Off hands though, back towards the centre half forward position. Picked up beautifully by Tanner. Tanner fires for goal, and he's put it through. I
was there till mid-season, then I got sacked. The great man thought that he and I should part ways, and rightfully so, I must confess. I was injury prone, and I guess the fire in the belly was no longer prevalent. We'd won a premiership, and I thought I'd got to the summit, and I probably wasn't as driven as perhaps I should have been. So certainly the right decision was made.
People from South Australia and West Australia spoke to me, and then when Collingwood spoke to me, because I haven't got a job at this stage, I thought, well, why not? They were on the bottom of the ladder, which was handy, So you're only going to go up. Mickey Mouse would have lifted them, wouldn't they? Really, a team with that sort of profile and those sort of players, they shouldn't have been on the bottom. So it was a good place for me to go to.
And then I found my way to Collingwood in June. Played 4 games, and then that was the end of my career.
Collingwood, under former Richmond coach Tom Hafey, had risen from last in 1976 to play off in the grand final. The Magpies had lost Phil Carman after the second semi-final. He'd been suspended for 2 matches for striking Hawthorn's Michael Tuck. It was to be the costliest penalty in league history.
You lose your centre-half forward on the eve of the grand final, and ironically, you got rubbed out for 2 weeks. Yeah, it happened to be 2 grand finals. That's only happened once ever. I think there was a draw in the 40s or something like that. Why didn't they give him 1 week?
In the other game, grand final, I stayed at home. We had a barbecue, and I watched it. Ironically enough, the first one was a draw.
Collingwood badly need this one. This could make the difference. Only 11 points. The big blonde, 6'4" of him, lines up, and he's put it through. Oh, it's a different ball game now. The Magpies are right back in it.
There's lots of trigger points in your life, in your career, and the 77 final series, and particularly the 2 grand finals, were I guess sets you up for the next 25, 30 years. It's what I am today. But in the first one, in the first grand final, I actually started ruck roving again, which I was really pleased about. You get back on the ball and instead of being stationary. So I had a few kicks, and I kicked a really bad kick in the first quarter, trying to square it to the front of the goal square, and I've mishit it, and it's gone straight to a Collingwood player, bounce goal. Well, the next 5 minutes was spent with a runner in my ear, chat, Anyhow, so quarter time came, and he's just flown me. I couldn't hide him. I couldn't get away from him. Absolutely give him. I think it's probably the best spray. I know there's some famous ones on camera. I think this tape's been lost. I hope it is, because if the quarter time break's only supposed to go for 7 or 8 minutes, I reckon he spent 23 minutes on me. Well, in the next 2 quarters, we didn't kick a goal, and Collingwood have kicked 6. I've been to the ball twice, I reckon, in a half of football in a grand final. I am dead set spewing and can't do anything about it.
To our black and white viewers, the Collingwood side are wearing the white shorts. Knocked out by Keenan, picked up by Magro, and the Magpies swinging to attack again. Anderson pushes the ball away.
So anyway, cut long story short, 3/4 time, he comes on, Johnny Byrne, who's a teammate, young player, good player, just said, "Bernie, you're off. So, Blighty, you go back on the ball." Oh, well, hello. I'm as fresh as a fair dinkum. It's like I've been in the Melbourne Cup and I've just joined them at the 1600 metre mark. All the blokes, they're knackered, all the other horses. I am as fresh as a daisy, keen as mustard. So as we break up to walk away, Press says, "Nah, bugger it. Blight, you're off." Wow, cop that. The last quarter of the Dron Grand Final, one M. Blight, this fella, sat watching it.
I remember at 3/4 time, and Brass sort of said, "We think we're gone," and we said, "No, we're not." And he told Malcolm Blight to go and have a shower, don't be on the ground, and put Billy Nettlefold on, and they'd stopped running Collingwood. And Brass said, "Can you do it, boys? Just run them." And we got up.
Talk about if you want to. There's been a lot of things happen in your life, but as I just mentioned that, then there is still a 10-second chill down the spine of all sorts of emotions that aren't very nice. But that's sport, and that's life in a lot of ways. And that moment, then, by some divine providence, I don't know what happened. Somehow the game was drawn.
And scores. North Melbourne a goal in front. The kick by Picken is into the goal square. There's a mark here to someone. It's in front of the
1977 was the year that I was first president of the AFL, and that was just an amazing scene, because when the scores were tied, when the final siren went, no one knew what to do. There were over 100,000 people at the MCG, and there was just a hush, and the players just dropped to the ground because no one knew what to do when there was a tie in a grand final.
Oh, the pressure on this veteran from Collingwood, played over 200 games, fires for the goals, and he's put it through and scores at that level. And scores at
Collingwood's first goal for the quarter.
34 minutes approaching. Owen with the ball on the half-back line.
And the ball driven out there towards Max Richardson, picked up by Little Bond. He's going for a run. Can he get it down there in time? There's the siren, I think, for the end of the game.
It's a draw.
It's a draw. The 1977 grand final is a draw.
The draw, there was really nothing feeling. I don't think anybody knew what to think. We'd come from 27 points behind, I think, at three-quarter time against Collingwood, who hadn't won a premiership for a fair while either, obviously. And to come from behind, to hit the front and then to actually draw it, I mean, just looking around and looking at the replay now, most people are laying on the ground, they didn't know what to think, they're holding their heads, they're all sort of, what's going on here? Are we playing extra time, or are we got to come back next week? What's the story? Are we both premiers?
It's an eerie feeling. Siren's gone, and you look up at the scoreboard and it's a draw, and you're just sitting around and think, well, what the hell do we do now? And we've played all year for this.
There's a bit of a fight going on.
Little Keenan's doing.
Someone should tell them the game's over. It's not worth getting yourself knocked out about.
I remember punching on with Rene Kink at the end of the game. I chased that Shane Bond and sort of got him, put pressure and kicked the ball. And Kinky went to shepherd me off, so I sort of elbowed him in the face, or just to get past him, brushed him. And standing there, he came up and gave me a whack, so I turned around and dropped him. And I was fighting at the end of the game.
We, in those days, had the Governor of Victoria always presenting the Premiership Cup. And I noticed, it always happens, about 2 minutes before the end, the Melbourne Cricket Club official who was in charge of the gate where the Governor walked down onto the ground, he rolled out the red carpet, which was the normal thing to do, for the Governor to walk down the red carpet and out onto the ground. But with all the 100-odd thousand people who were there, when the siren went and the match was tied, the only person who knew what to do was the MCC official, because he went to the carpet and rolled it up. There was no presentation by the Governor that day.
And that's where Brass was fantastic. He grabbed us and took us in the rooms pretty quickly, got us all in the coach's room, got the wives down as well, got all the wives and girlfriends in, and basically said to everybody that we were going to win the next week. He pleaded with the women to give us all to him for one more week. And it was very positive from the start about how we were going to approach the week, and very confident that we would win the next week.
There we see Barassi hugging his players because he must have realised that they were in a pretty sick position.
What a coach has got to do, once he climbs down from his box, he's got that time and he's got to think of something to say. The things that Tom Hafey and I had to say hadn't been said since 1948, a draw in a grand final. But one of the things that struck my mind is that what I say to them now is going to be very important. I just pointed out to them they're going to get lots of advice on how to deal with this unbelievable situation of 2 grand finals in a row. I'm more qualified than any of those people. You don't love me as much as any of those people and all of that, but I'm more qualified, so listen to what I've got to say.
I'll never forget, he got up there and he just said that night, he said, I want your bodies for one more week. He said, no, I'll promise you a premiership. And it was good stuff.
You know, the famous thing was, I've got to front the match committee. So that's the coach and these learned gentlemen around. Anyhow, that week they did. They called me in and said, you know, your form's not very good. I said, well, no, I won't make an excuse, but it's pretty up in the balls at the other end for 60 minutes of the game and you're nowhere near it. As I walked out the door, I said, look, I mean, you blokes going to have to make a decision. Whichever way it is, I reckon we're certain he's to win next week anyhow. Because what Brass did after the game, after the draw, and what he said, I reckon set us up beautifully for the next week. So I said it'll annoy hell out of me if I'm not there, but if I'm not there, I reckon we'll win anyhow.
We had other people watching Collingwood train, and they reckon Hafey ran them into the ground on the Thursday night at training, 400s, 300s, 200s.
But the following week, for all sorts of reasons, on the front of the cover of the book is the coach, is that I'm actually on the front cover, running out. Don't ask me how that happened, I've never asked anyone, but I know I used to try and run out last. I had a bit of a thing. And as I was going out, Brass grabbed me by the arm, and he can't remember doing this, and I've never made this up. I mean, it was just, he said, if I was a praying man, I'd pray for you today. I didn't know if that was, I'm really, really hoping you play really well because I really want you to, or don't stuff up again, or your history
It was a very good time, actually. But he didn't train us very hard, talked to us a lot. I think he tried to make us mentally fresh. You know, it was because we were pretty tired. We'd come for a long, hard campaign, and like we'd been going for a fair while. And I had a crook thigh, had a cork leg, and if they had swabbed me, I had a bit of gear in me, actually. I was playing with that morphine and aspro, that pink lady, by geez, that's good stuff. You know, go through brick walls on that.
But then we managed to get in place all the arrangements for another game the next week, and that was the first time a grand final had ever been sponsored, first time there was ever a grand final parade, first time ever pre-match entertainment, so it was quite a significant year. And we set about, this is the AFL, set about arranging for the sponsor to come back the next week and put up the same amount of money the next week. We didn't even know whether we had tickets to sell, and then finally someone about an hour after the game said, yes, we found another batch of tickets. So they went on sale. Thank God we had them tucked away in a drawer somewhere. And then all those tickets were sold by the Tuesday.
Right at the start of the 1977 grand final replay, Thompson and Keenan. I think Keenan got first tap to it taken by Magro. The Magpies into attack towards half forward.
So the rematch, the replay, was up and running, and North Melbourne won that game. And so that certainly created enough excitement that made up for the loss in 1976.
And on the fitness line, I didn't know what Collingwood were going to do. I've heard since that they trained normally, but I couldn't see the sense in that myself. If you're not fit by a season plus a final season of 4 weeks. Anyway, so we had very light training. But I think the main reason why I know the scores don't indicate it, but we probably had a comfortable win, I'd say. I think all along we were annoyed that we had to play it again, because we felt we were the better side. I knew they felt that way. They did. I didn't tell them about the AFL coming to me and saying, look, Ron, there's a couple of medal in it for North Melbourne if they get a draw.
Coming over now, and we see Byrne drive the ball out to David Dench at centre field. A long hand pass out to Shimmerbush, left alone.
It's every kid's ambition, isn't it, to play in a winning grand final and to be captain. And through the unfortunate injury to Keith, I was able to achieve that.
Very tough on Keith. He'd been captain since '76, since he took over from Barry Davis, and he was playing pretty good football, Keith, as he always did. And you don't like to see anybody get a knee injury, especially when you're captain and you got a chance of carrying that premiership cup on grand final day. So I suppose one door closes for somebody and another one opens for Denchi. And Denchi grabbed it with both ends, obviously, which was good.
1977 grand final replay. North Melbourne leading by 5 goals. Thompson's tapped down in the centre. Collingwood badly need a goal early in this final quarter to have any hope. Cable, well done. Hamilton turned towards the centre wings, beautifully done to Schimmelbusch. In turn it goes towards Casson. Cleverly done over the back. Max Richardson can hardly lift his legs. Taken by Arnold Brightus. North Melbourne dangerous again. Back it goes towards Xavier Tanner. To Schimmelbusch. 20 metres out. 15 metres out. Aims for goal. And that could be the sealer. That could be the sealer in the grand final of 77. Magnificent handball by North Melbourne. That's been their pattern for many years under coach Ron Barassi.
The 77 premiership was probably, I got a bigger kick out of that than the 75. I know 75 was fantastic because it was our first and how it affected people that break from North Melbourne, but we actually had to work harder, and like anything else you do in life, the harder you work, the more you put in, the more you get out of it. As I said, before we lost the last home and away game, we lost our first final. Then we had to play in finals basically in 5 weeks in a row. It's never been done before, where a side plays in 5 hard finals in a row and eventually comes out on top. So it certainly gave us an enormous amount of satisfaction.
There we see coming off the ground, Crackers Keenan.
I'll never forget, we had it won, and Lloyd Dwyer came out and he said, will you come off, Crackers? And I looked at Laurie, and there was poor old Stephen McCann. You couldn't come back on in those days. He was sitting there in the interchange wanting to go on. And I thought, oh, I've rucked all day, I rucked all last week on my own. And he's saying, come on, crackers. And I thought, I can be a bastard here or I can be a good bloke. And I said to Stan, turned around to me and said, come on, crackers, we'll leave together. So we trotted off the ground together with McCann. And then Manasseh made his run. And I said to Lloyd, I told you I shouldn't have gone off. And he said, we've got it won, forget about it, crackers.
The only 2 times it's been done to come from 3rd place on the VFL ladder after home and away season. There it is. The grand final is all over. The replay and North Melbourne have won the flag for 1977. North's 2nd premiership flag. Having won it in 1975 as coach Ron Barassi. North winning their 2nd flag in the history of the club in 1977. Look at the ecstatic Barassi. Look at those North Melbourne players. As I mentioned earlier, North Melbourne in 1975, when they won their first flag, became the first club in VFL history to win the flag from 3rd position. And they've done the game this year.
That was the other great thing about Barassi. You know, he came to the club and he embraced all of the people that were the club. That was one of his great strengths, you know. He wasn't a coach that came in and was looking over his shoulder, and he introduced good people to the place as well. So suddenly this club that had never had any success had successful people operating right throughout the place, and they were not just successful, but they were inspirational.
Without a Ron Barassi in charge in those years of the 70s, well, we might never have reached the heights that the footy club reached. He was terrific.
There's Ron Barassi, no doubt one of the greatest coaches Australia's ever seen, and wherever he goes, success seems to follow him in football.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 200 hard-fought minutes, the North Melbourne club have earned the right to be classified as 1977 premiers.
I really like Ron Barassi as a person, and he was a good coach, good tactically, very good, very fair, usually right, and treated everybody the same, and didn't hold a grudge. Put my head into a locker once in a grand final for whacking a bloke. I whacked Stan Magro, but that's after he'd belted Zavtana, so I squared the ledger. Brass said I wasn't allowed to fight and put my head into a locker.
He could be really hopping into you 1 minute, and after the game he could take you aside and buy you a drink, and he'd be your best friend again. He never held grudges, but he certainly let you know when he thought you weren't doing the right thing.
He just never ever had a chip on his shoulder. He could give you the greatest burst of all time and have the biggest roaring fight and argument, but 5 minutes later, and that was the way he was with players too.
We had a falling out after I whacked on Scott and missed out in the 78 grand final, and it was probably the darkest time of my football career. I let North Melbourne down, I let my teammates down, I let coach down. Brass made me go and get changed over in the visitors' rooms. It wasn't that bad, I suppose. Have team meetings on my own.
A lot of people love him. A lot of people respect him. The older he gets and the more he does, like belting blokes up in the street and walking on water at Commonwealth Games. I mean, the bigger he seems to get.
Coach Ron Barassi.
Everyone played a part. And to have it all wrapped up in a lot of grand finals in a row and a couple of premierships in the 70s was a very, very nice reward.
1977 VFL Grand Final Cup, North Melbourne.
So join in the chorus and sing it one and all. Join in the chorus, North Melbourne's on the ball. Good old North Melbourne, they're champions, you'll agree. North Melbourne is the team that plays to win for you and me.
Kelly's green test, Ron Barassi, Slate 1, take 1.
Bail up and throw up your hands. Bail up, throw up your hands.
Again, Ron.
Bail up, throw up your hands.